All right. I suppose there's no time like the present. Let's do this. Um, Hello, my name is Tim Howe. I'm an assistant dean of admission at Reed College. I use he, him pronouns, and I want to welcome you all to day 4 of our college application workshop week. Today we will be recapping the idea of acing the interview. Um, and I'm going to give you the 10-second version right off the bat, which is spoiler alert, you can't ace it necessarily. It's just a conversation. So I want you to go into this session and then subsequently into your interview with your mind at ease, because we're not grading you at all. This is a chance for both parties to glean additional information about each other and to fill in the blanks that you might have on your mind. This is going to be a 15, maybe 20 minutes or so. I'm going to go over some of the main points pretty briefly. And then I like to have a pretty open Q&A at the end, because I think that's where we get some of those best nuggets of information. The best way to do that would be just to use the chat, and you can chat it to everyone. We're going to try and keep the questions specifically on the interview, but if you have a burning question about the application process in general, I'm very open to talking about that as well. And something to note, my goal in this session is not for you to walk away with skills that are specific to Reed, but are specific to, or that are general and open to wherever you are interested. So don't think of this as a Reed specific session. Hopefully this will be helpful information wherever you end up applying. So with that, I'm going to share my screen again. All right, so first things first, I think it's important to ask yourself, why do we interview? What is the point of an interview in the first place? I have a couple points here. Interviews allow prospective students to demonstrate interest, demonstrate qualifications, show us your personality, fill in any gaps and provide additional context to the application, and get questions answered, okay? So I wanna go through that piece by piece. First thing it says is demonstrate interest. When you are looking at different schools to apply to, one of the first things you should research is whether the school is evaluating the interest that you show. Some schools do, some schools don't. At Reed, we consider interest a pretty big piece of the evaluation process. We look at your qualifications and we look at your demonstrated interest. Every time you touch down with a college official, that is demonstrated interest. If you send me an email later saying, hey, Tim, that was a super awesome session, and I'm really interested in learning A, B, and C, I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to put it into your file. So later, when I am going through your application, I'm reading it and I'm taking notes, I can say, I wonder how many times I've interacted with this person. And then I can pull that up and say, wow, this is a very interested person. Attending a workshop like this is demonstrated interest. Setting up a one-on-one with a student is demonstrated interest. And one of the best ways that you can demonstrate interest is through an interview. At its base level, what you are doing is showing that you are interested in the place. There's a lot more that you can get out of an interview, but at its base level, if you just show up, you're showing that you are interested in this place, and it's going to go into your application that you are interested. Okay. You're also demonstrating your qualifications and your interests in the world. The first thing I want to note about this is that when you are showing up to this interview, you're showing up to fill in any blank spots that don't fit well into an application. Okay. If you come and you just tell me about your activities list and you tell me about your grades and your classes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to write about those things in that order, and then I'm going to put it into your application. And then when I pull up your interview write-up, it's going to look like your resume. The problem is, right before I read your interview, I read your activities list, I read your transcript, I see all that information. So when you show up to an interview, it should be new information. That's really important, okay? So those are the two main points. What we are looking for, essentially, is we're trying to answer this question. How does this person interact with me? And how is that going to resonate within our community? I'm not looking for a list of qualifications and, the ways in which you've changed the world. I'm looking for how you interact with the world around you, what kind of passions you have, what excites you. One of the best things that I can get from an interview is asking a question and then veering off on a conversation about the subject. So if I say, what's something that you've been reading lately? And you say, well, I've been going through every Cormac McCarthy novel, and I'm really stuck on the road. And we start talking about the road, and then we talk about existentialism, and we talk about all the different themes within that. It tells me that you're really interested in something, and that's going to be something that I'm going to be able to brag about later. Essentially, my job is to advocate for you as a whole human. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all my notes that after reading your application, I'm going to send it to another counselor. They're going to read your application. They're going to write a lot of notes. They're going to send them to me. I'm going to take all those notes, and then I'm going to go in front of all of the counselors, and I'm going to brag about you. And I'm going to say, this is why this person should come here. A, B, C, and D. Okay? The more you can show me that you are a whole human, because that is what every single one of you is, the more I'm going to be able to advocate for you. Okay? An interview is a great place to get that, I don't know, for lack of a better term, of like the vibe check. I'm trying to just figure out what it's like to be in a room with you. Okay? Okay, so I'm going to go through this briefly because right now there's really only one place that you will be interviewing, and that would be virtual. But I think it's important just to note that there are other places where you could be interviewing as well, specifically during different times of the year. So there's the on-campus interview. The on-campus interview is going to be led by a counselor or a student, typically about 30 minutes. And don't worry if you get, a student over a counselor or a counselor over a student. Everyone is really well trained in what to pull out from that. The second kind of interview that you might see, if you're a junior, maybe next year, knock on wood, or maybe in the spring, really knock on wood, is a travel season interview. Travel season is kind of what we call it on the inside, but basically it means that our counselors are flying out to their territory, going to a lot of schools, and then at night they're setting up several interviews all at once, typically in a hotel lobby or a coffee shop or restaurant, some very public space. Okay, here is my hot tip for you: if you are ever in a room with a counselor, if they offer to buy you coffee or a pastry, and you want a coffee or a pastry, go for it. I like to put that out there because 90% of the time when I do that, the interviewee is like, oh, I don't know. No, that's okay. It's not my money. It's on read. Please take the coffee or pastry if you want it. If you don't want it, no worries. But just know that, you should go into these at ease, because the feeling we are trying to invoke is not a job interview. The feeling we are trying to invoke is that you are sitting in front of the cafeteria waiting for your food, and we're there too, and we're having a chat. We're learning things about each other. Okay, so breathe easy going in, because it's called an interview. It should feel a lot more like a conversation with someone that you're excited to meet. The most common kind of interview nowadays is virtual, because we are living in a very strange world right now. What that means is the time in which you can interview has really been flattened. Travel season was kind of limited to when the counselors were traveling. On campus was limited to when you were actually in town or could visit the campus. Virtually really flattens it. The one thing that you're going to be missing from a virtual interview is the feeling of physically being in a room with that person, which, like I said, is kind of what we're looking for. So when you are thinking about what parts of yourself you want to convey, think about how you are going to best present your personality. Everything else in the application is either more quantitative or it is kind of said and done, like you don't have a lot of power over it. The interview is that place where you still have the reins as to how you really hold yourself. So think about what it is that you want to convey to the world. So what we have here is what an interview will look like. And it's going to look different school to school, obviously. But we have some sample questions that I want to just read out for you here. So some things that you might hear within your interview, because the main goal is, like I said, to try and get the feeling for what you are or who you are and what it's like to be in a room with you, is tell me about the toughest class you've ever taken and how you handled it. Where do you like to sit in your classrooms and why? Who is your favorite teacher? Why did they make an impression? How do you like to spend your free time? What is it about Reed that specifically interests you? In what ways would you like to get involved around campus? And then finally, that last one, which you will hear in every single Reed interview at least, and in some form or another at many colleges, is there anything you would like to tell us that won't show up in your application? Okay. I want to go over a couple things that you should think about when you're in the middle of the interview, but also after the interview. So when you're in the middle of the interview, like I said before, this should feel like a conversation. And a good conversation, at least, is a two-way street. So maybe your interviewer will say there will be time for questions at the end. If they don't, ask questions along the way, because this should be a value add for both of us. I should be able to glean some information about who you are, and you should be able to feel like you have the power to ask questions about what this institution is as well. The more questions you ask throughout, the more I'm going to be able to react to what you're saying and then ask you new questions that are more specialized. When you, there will be time for questions definitely at the end. And when you have that chance, I had this question earlier today. Someone said, what kinds of questions are you looking for? And that was a tough question for me, because I was like, what is it that I'm really looking for in a student when they're asking questions? And it's like, oh, I don't actually have specific questions that I want to hear. I just want to know that you have authentic questions. I'm going through hundreds of interviews every year, and I'm going to be able to sniff out when you're just faking something. So if you have burning questions about student life, academics, department specific things, what it's like to be in Portland or wherever the college is, how easy it is to get around the area, what do students do for fun? If it's something that you're truly authentically excited about, ask it. After the interview, when you are done with the interview, this isn't required, but it never hurts to shoot an email to the counselor. Or the student for that matter. They're going to hand you either a business card if you're in person, or they'll send you contact information over Zoom. Copy and paste that and just send a quick email, or even a snail mail is amazing. I don't know if y'all feel this way, but when I get a letter in the mail, I get so excited. Even if it's going to like several different people, I have, this is my house here, but at my office, I have a wall of the thank you notes that I've gotten. And I can tell that some of them are kind of hastily done. I don't care. I love that you sent me something. So it never hurts to send a thank you note. And that's not just here, that's a life lesson. Okay, let's see. Do I have any other slides here? I don't. Before I get to this, I would like to open it up to questions. And so like I said before, we can use the chat. Make sure you're shooting it off to everyone. Make sure that it is a question specifically about interviewing or the college application process. I have time for about 5 minutes of questions. Unfortunately, this went a lot quicker than I thought it was going to go. But if you have any questions, I'm very open to answering. And I used to be a teacher, so I can wait. Oh, I see a question. Let's see. This is a general read question. My school does not have letter or number grades, and since Reed does not use SAT or ACT, will I still be able to apply? Absolutely, yes, definitely. Do not worry about that. We want to see that you have completed high school. And we know that every high school is going to look a little bit different. You're going to hear this term a lot throughout this process. You're going to hear people say, we use a holistic approach when evaluating an application. And so if you haven't heard that, next time you hear it, be like, oh yeah, Tim told me that. But it's true. That's what places, a lot of institutions tend to do. So it means that we're going to evaluate your grades or your classes within the context of your learning community, not up against someplace with a different style of grading, okay? Got a couple other questions here. When is the latest time to schedule an interview? That's a good question. Kind of depends. You can schedule an interview after you apply. My advice to you there is to schedule it pretty shortly after you apply. The longer you wait, the more time and factors there are in between where we could like forget about the vibe that your application was giving off, or maybe we've evaluated it already. And if you interview way long after that, then we have to go back and rework what we were thinking before. So either interview before or shortly after you apply. But beyond that, we don't have you don't want to interview after you get your decision back, essentially. Anytime before then is totally fine for us. Let's see, you read the personal statements / essays before the interviews, correct? I assume that's also a great topic for conversation if it warrants further thought and attention. So pretty pertinent to the last question, we will possibly read your personal statements or supplemental essays beforehand. That is, if you interview after you apply. We won't be able to see any of your material before you apply. So think about that within the context of the interview. The other thing is, if you are interviewing with a student, they will not read your personal statement or your essays. So don't go in assuming that everyone has read your work, because at least at Reed, there are 2, maybe 3 people who have done so for each application. Let's see, can the interview hurt your application? If, for example, you get nervous or don't click with your interviewer. Okay, so this is the blunt truth of interviews. 90% of interviews are good. Not amazing, not terrible, they're good. And that's good, that's a good thing. You should be excited about that because you're showing demonstrated interest, you're adding value to your application, you're filling in the blanks. 5% or less of these applications will take my opinion from before and say, I didn't think this person should have come here before, I absolutely need them here now. And the other 5% or less will say, I thought this person needed to come here and I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure they don't get here. That's pretty harsh. That's not true. But there's a small percentage of these where I'm saying this did not go well, and I'm going to write about it as such. But the vast majority of these just say, yes, this was great. Okay. We are not looking for any one type of student, and that goes for most of these colleges. We're not looking for people who are 100% proactive, go-getter extroverts. We're not looking for 100% introvert, quiet, deep thinkers. We're looking for every type of student, and we recognize that, like I said, this is not a job interview. This is a conversation, and we want to treat it as such. Let's see, and then finally, this is gonna be my last question here. How formal are they, how formal are they supposed to be? More towards applying for a job or more towards chatting with your friend? Depends on the institution. Some places are going to want a more formal interview, but for the most part, you should go in feeling like you are very confident in yourself, B, ready to run a conversation or at least be a part of one, and C, feel very casual. There will be some formal times. Typically, this is not one of them. This is a chance for you to take a deep breath and remember, like, I'm a person too, and I'm not going to, I'm not evaluating your interview or your application as a robot. When you send in your application to me, it doesn't get scanned for your grades and like count the amount of activities you have. It goes to me. I read it. And so when you're, in an interview, don't think of me as some big scary college official who has the big red pen that can make or break the decision. My name is Tim, and I'm just here to learn more about you. Simple as that. Okay. So with that, where is my screen? There you are. All right, I want to thank you all for being here. And you had some really fantastic questions. We have more opportunities for you to get involved this week. Even tomorrow, we have a few more different workshops. Next up, we have Is Early Decision Right for Me? I think this is a really important one because if you know anything about early decision, it's kind of like a chess piece. You get one, you have to strategically place it, okay? So this is going to be really helpful. So tomorrow at 1 Pacific time, we will debunk early decision myths and answer your questions so you can leave this session feeling prepared to decide on your application round. And then, every single weekday, we have a virtual info session. So I highly recommend checking that out. You can go to reed.edu/visit to sign up for interviews, sign up for student panels, sign up for virtual information sessions. If you want to just chat with me, not as an interview, but just learn more about the school, you can do that as well. But with that, I want to thank you all for being here. I hope you are all feeling safe and healthy. Please wash your hands, then look at them and just wash them again just in case. And I'm really excited to read all of your applications as soon as possible. So thank you so much.